The honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, the blockades have ended. Downtown Ottawa has been cleared. If there was ever a national emergency, which remains in doubt, it's over. So there is no need for the Emergencies Act vote tonight, but it would seem then that this vote tonight is about far more than the blockades and the protesters in downtown Ottawa. It would seem it's only about power. Yes. About the government having the power and setting the precedent that bank accounts of political dissidents can be frozen. Isn't that right, Mr. Speaker?
That's right.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, over the past week, we've heard that Canada didn't need emergency measures to resolve the issue in Ottawa. Thousands of police across Canada were able to solve the situation. This isn't the first time this has happened. However, continuing to impose the Emergencies Act, which doesn't have its place in my opinion, is not necessary. The Ambassador Bridge was cleared without this act. Why is the Prime Minister insisting on invoking an emergency act that Canadians don't want? Speaker, in my hometown of Quebec City, demonstrations took place without the emergency legislation. What was lacking clearly in Ottawa in recent weeks was leadership. The Premier of Quebec does not want the Emergencies Act, and neither do 7 other premiers, but they are imposing this extreme act. Why does the government insist on keeping these measures, even though the premiers don't want it?
Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, has the government received a legal opinion from either the Attorney General or the Department of Justice whether the emergency powers granted under the Emergencies Act, particularly the power to freeze financial accounts, are consistent with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms? And if so, will the government release the legal opinion to the House before this evening's vote?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question. I am confident as Attorney General, Mr. Speaker, that we have met the standard to apply the Emergencies Act. And as we have stated on many occasions, Mr. Speaker, we are required as a government that any measures that we take will conform with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, including Section 8 rights of search and seizure.
The honourable member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Justice Minister or the Finance Minister. First, how many bank accounts have been frozen under authority of the emergency proclamation? Second, will the government commit that no further funds will be frozen without a court order verifying that a rational connection exists between the funds and the unlawful blockades? And third, will any currently frozen accounts for which a rational connection has not been demonstrated be released forthwith?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Well, I want to thank my colleague for the many questions, but I will say at the very beginning that the RCMP have clarified that at no time they provided any list of donors to banks for enforcement under the Emergencies Act, Mr. Speaker. And with regards to those financial controls which are being exercised under the Act, Mr. Speaker, as we've said many times, those powers are being exercised in a manner that is consistent with the Charter, including due process rights, as well as the right to be protected against any unreasonable search and seizure. Thank you.
The honourable member for Avignon, La Matisse, Matane, Matapedia. Mr. Speaker, the occupation of Ottawa is over. There are no trucks left in the streets. The protesters have left. The police are in control of the situation and normal life is resuming. And yet tonight the House will vote on the implementation of the Emergencies Act to address what the government wrongly calls a national crisis. Not only has there never been a national crisis, but there's no longer a crisis at all. Will the Prime Minister immediately rescind his declaration of a state of crisis? The Honourable Minister, Mr. Speaker, we have seen progress against illegal blockades, but threats still exist. The Emergencies Act will be key in terms of ending illegal blockades. We received advice from experts and police officials that have said this act is still necessary. The honourable member for Avignon, La Matisse, Matane. Mr. Speaker, this is completely absurd. The Prime Minister wants us to vote for extraordinary measures to get no trucks and no protesters off the streets in Ottawa. And yet if we oppose it, he'll make it a no-confidence vote, so he can call a second unnecessary election in 6 months. But worse than that, what he is demanding means that for the first time in history, the House of Commons would support the use of Emergencies Act to deal with a problem that no longer exists. Does the Prime Minister realize how low a bar he is setting and how damaging a precedent he is setting?